Well, good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to jump on here for a moment or two and talk about some of the hot topics that are going on in our nation today and just kind of give my opinion, point of view, perspective on what I think about all these issues that we're facing. A couple of issues in particular. Of course, we know the hot topic nowadays is racism. And I wanted to get into that a little bit, give you my perspective, my point of view. Let's talk about it. Probably more than likely say something that you don't agree with, and that's okay. I don't mind disagreement, but let's not be petty about our disagreements. Let's talk it out, and let's see if we can come to some, consensus on what matters most in the black community. What really is the main issue in the black community when you think about all the various things that are going on there. My name is David, and little background on me, very short synopsis of my upbringing. I grew up in the inner city of Chicago in a place called Robert Taylor Homes. And if you don't know anything about Robert Taylor Homes, you can Google that at your leisure, and you'll see that Robert Taylor Homes was during the 80s one of the most high crime areas in America. It rivaled Crenshaw. It rivaled Cabrini Greens, which was also in Chicago. So, again, my perspective is that of someone that has seen what it's like to live in a high crime area in Chicago, primarily south side of Chicago, which most of us, if you've been alive for any amount of time, you've heard about Chicago, in south side of Chicago. And I can tell you that, the stories from my perspective are true. I grew up in a time when it was not abnormal to hear gunshots. It wasn't abnormal to hear about, people being shot, murdered, killed on a daily basis. I would actually, and I would remember a point in my life where I would hear bullets and I would not think much about it. As long as I was in my home, as a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid, it was just a normal way of life for me to hear that. I can recall, my mom turning on the news, the local news, and hearing about somebody shot, someone killed, and this was just a normal occurrence. And so for me, growing up in the inner city of Chicago, it just was, again, something I was used to. But I can tell you that I never got used to walking the streets. I would always be fearful after dark, after sunset, to walk the streets, because at any given point in time, literally anything could happen, from murder to rape to stabbing to killing to you name it. It could happen, and it happens. So when I fast forward now 20, 30 years later in my life and the experiences that I've had outside of the inner city of Chicago, having spent some time in Missouri. I lived there for a while, graduated high school from Missouri. So grew up in a very small town there for a few years, and was able to see a contrast between the life that I lived in the inner city of Chicago and the life that I live in a country town in Missouri. And so all of these things kind of shape my ideal, shape my perspective on life, shape my perspective on what it means to be black in America. And I definitely have experienced racism in America. I've experienced that firsthand. But I can say without a shadow of a doubt, when I think about what had the most impact on my life, or negative impact on my life, was not the racism. It was fear of being hurt, being abused, being taken advantage of in the inner city by other people that look like me. And when I hear all of these things going on pertaining to, people talking about things like systemic racism being a major issue, police brutality being a major issue, all these things, the white man, being against the black man, so on and so forth. When I hear that, I think about the reality. And the reality is the number one thing facing the black community is not systemic racism. It's not the white man. It's not police brutality. It is not. It is not. When you think about the inner city of Chicago, and I'm speaking, I will say that it just as an example, you have children being killed every single day. Now, when I say children, I'm not talking about 17, 16, 15-year-old kids, because that's tragic in and of itself. I'm talking children under 6 years of age being killed in the streets a dozen times a month on average, sometimes more. Children, babies under 6 years of age. When you think about just let's say the year 2019. In the year 2019, there were 14 unarmed black men killed by police. Okay, that's terrible. Shouldn't happen. All right, it should not happen. Okay, there are to be better policing, more rules and guidelines to eliminate, such a horrible statistic. But, and I hate to use the word "but" because it means pretty much forget about what I just said. But what I want to focus on is the drastic contrast between the number of unarmed black men being killed and the number of babies. And I'm focusing on babies in ages 6 and under. I'm not talking about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I don't even want to get to that right now, but I just want to put this in perspective. In 2019, 456 children under the age of 6 were murdered in the streets. How many of you even knew that? Let's be honest. Most of us didn't know that because we're hearing about all these other things. And so when we use the term Black Lives Matter, for instance, what does that even mean? If you didn't know that 456 children, black children primarily under the age of 6, was killed in the streets, but yet you still say Black Lives Matter? But you weren't aware of that? What does that say about the slogan? What does that say about it? Why did we hear about that? Why haven't we heard about that on a national scale? 456 children under the age of 6 years old being killed is an epidemic, folks. It's a real problem. And I'm not trying to take away, listen, everybody has their lane. Get your lane, stay in it, whatever you want to do. But in my estimation, when I think about the real problem or the major problem in the black community, I think about these children. And I did something that I should not have done. I Googled these children and I saw their faces. I saw the faces of these children, 3 years old, 2 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old. Killed, murdered, way before their time, taken out of here. But we didn't hear about that on a national level. That's an epidemic, folks. That's a real problem. And it's unfortunate that so many people from mainstream media on both sides of the aisle are using other issues to gain popularity, to gain financial gain, and they're using all these other issues, but they fail to mention the real problem in the black community. It's not policing. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not. It's simply not. It's black people killing other black people. This is something that I have seen firsthand. I have firsthand experience. No one can tell me what it's like to grow up in the inner city as a black person. Nobody. No one. No one can tell me anything about racism that I don't already know and haven't already experienced. And I'm not telling you that there isn't racism in this country. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm telling you is it's time to get a little bit of perspective. If we really care about black lives, if we really care, then we should hear more about these children. We should hear more about their lives. The most innocent among us, taken away from us so soon, too soon. Why don't we focus on that for just a while? Why don't we call their names? Why don't we say their names? Why not? Why won't you hear their names called? Why won't you see certain what they call black leaders come to their funerals? Why don't you hear these black leaders, quotation, black leaders, call on the black community to stop this violence? Because it's not financially expedient to do so. Because you're not going to get a lot of clicks and views. Because they rather focus on other things, which to me, in my estimation, as someone who grew up in the inner city of Chicago, it's distractions to talk about other things. When you have children. America, this is a real problem. And I told you, I looked at these names of these children. I saw their faces. And I can honestly say that I'm very, very reluctant to Google again, to Google any more names, because it broke my heart. It broke my heart. We're talking 2-year-olds. It almost seems like it's not even real. In America, yes, in America, every day. You're talking about a 3-year-old little boy in Miami, killed, murdered. Talking about a baby, not even 1 year old, murdered while in his stroller in Chicago. This is what we're talking about. And you may say, I know the argument. I understand the counter argument, if there can be one. Well, you know, we're focusing on police brutality because that's the system. They represent the system. They represent the law. And I get that. But I've seen police come into communities where there was high crime. I've seen it. And most of the time when they come into these high crime areas, you have people that are armed, that are violent, that are criminals. And I'm not making light of what the police have done in some cases, in the few cases, which essentially are a few. We're talking maybe a little bit over a dozen every year. I'm not making light of that. But let's get a little perspective. They're not coming in there with guns blazing because somebody called the police on an Easter bunny. They're coming in there because somebody called the police on a criminal. They called the police on someone who was terrorizing a community. So let's have a little perspective here. And in most cases, when you're talking about murder in the inner city, most of those cases are not solved. When you talk about these little children that are killed, where are the Ben Crumps? Where are the high-powered lawyers fighting for them, for their justice? Where are they? Where's the MSNBCs and the CNNs in these communities? Think about it, folks. Think about it. 456 children under the age of 6 murdered in 1 year in America. That's an epidemic. Think about that. I'll be back later. We'll talk some more, and I'll open up even more or enlighten you more on some of the things that I've seen with my own eyes, my experiences. But it's time for the Black community to begin to focus on Black lives. It's time to focus on Black lives. All Black lives matter. All Black lives matter.